Hey everyone, let's just jump right into this explainer. Welcome to the Global Dashboard for May 26th, 2026. If you're looking to wrap your head around the massive, frankly overwhelming forces shaping our world right this second, well, you're absolutely in the right place. We're going to use the data and reports coming in from across the globe today to paint a very clear picture of exactly where we stand. To make sense of today's crazy news cycle, we've broken these 15 global developments down into 4 main buckets: global conflicts and tensions, strategic alliances and trade, climate, health and space, and finally, politics and civil unrest. Let's get to it. Section 1, Global Conflicts and Tensions. We're starting at the macro level here, with the absolute highest stakes security situations dominating international diplomacy today. Just look at this wild paradox unfolding in the Middle East right now. On one hand, you've got active diplomacy. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio and the Iranian Foreign Ministry are actually confirming real progress on a peace pact framework. But literally, on the exact same day, active combat. U.S. Central Command had to launch self-defense strikes against missile sites and Iranian boats laying maritime mines. And this was right after a surface-to-air missile site locked onto American warplanes. It's this crazy tightrope walk of simultaneous peace-building and live military action. And while that framework is inching forward, former President Trump is out there pushing for a massive expansion, basically an Abraham Accords sequel. He's actively calling on Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Pakistan, Turkey, Egypt, and Jordan to normalize relations with Israel. But here's the kicker. Pakistan immediately shut that premise down, firmly doubling down on their long-standing support for Palestinian statehood. Adding fuel to that incredibly complex fire, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu just ordered the IDF to escalate its offensive in southern Lebanon. The stated objective, to quote, completely crush Hezbollah. This major escalation comes on the heels of what are being described as near-daily violations of the ceasefire agreement we saw back on April 17th. Now, zooming out to Eastern Europe, the conflict in Ukraine is seeing a really severe escalation. After a heavy bombardment of the capital earlier this week, Moscow straight up announced they intend to launch precise, systematic strikes on military targets and decision-making centers right in Kyiv. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov reportedly warned U.S. officials that these strikes are direct retaliation for border attacks, and they are urgently telling all foreigners to get out of the area immediately. All right, moving on to Section 2, Strategic Alliances and Trade. Let's see how nations are actually teaming up economically and militarily to handle these exact global pressures. $20 billion. That's a massive number, right? But the why behind it is what's truly fascinating. The Quad nations, so Japan, Australia, India, and the U.S., just wrapped up a high-level meeting in New Delhi, and they are mobilizing this huge pool of public and private money for one specific goal: securing supply chains for critical minerals and clean energy. Make no mistake, this is a massive, highly coordinated economic counterpunch to China's growing maritime assertiveness. Meanwhile, over in the Pacific, regional security is facing yet another persistent test. North Korea is back to weapons testing. South Korea's Joint Chiefs reported that for the first time in over a month, the North launched multiple projectiles. This included a short-range ballistic missile from the Jeongju area that flew about 80 kilometers out into the sea. So tensions there are definitely simmering again. But hey, it's not all conflict. On a much more cooperative note, Japan and the massive South American customs union Mercosur, which includes heavy hitters like Brazil, are gearing up for a sweeping bilateral economic partnership. Trade sources say we can expect a formal initiative to be announced right on the sidelines of the upcoming G7 summit in France. This is huge, guys. It could seriously reshape global import markets and potentially even impact the prices we pay every day. So, with all this intense geopolitical maneuvering going on, you gotta wonder, how is the world responding to the massive physical planetary threats hitting us at the exact same time? Which brings us right to Section 3, Climate, Health, and Space. From extreme weather anomalies to absolute medical emergencies, the physical systems of our globe are literally under siege right now. Take a look at this. We're tracking 3 totally separate but severe domestic crises unfolding today. In Europe, it's a dangerous, unseasonal heat dome. Over in the southern U.S., brutal tornado clusters and windstorms that have put over 30 million Americans under flash flood alerts. And then in Garden Grove, California, 16,000 people are still evacuated from their homes because an aerospace facility has a volatile chemical tank structurally compromised and overheating. It's just wild how weather systems and industrial hazards are upending thousands of lives all at once. To put that European heat dome into perspective, temperatures are spiking a staggering 15 degrees Celsius above seasonal averages. 15 degrees! This is driven by this huge high-pressure system trapping warm air migrating from North Africa over the UK, Ireland, France, and Spain. It's gotten so extreme that parts of Italy actually had to pass emergency restrictions on outdoor labor just to keep people safe. And when we talk about human tolls, it honestly doesn't get starker than what's happening right now in the Democratic Republic of Congo. A brutal Ebola epidemic is tearing through severely under-resourced displacement camps. The situation at the ISP camp in Bunia is setting off massive alarm bells for frontline aid workers. Picture this. You have 10,000 people in one camp, and they have exactly one thermometer. Just one. And absolutely zero running water. I mean, just read this quote from the humanitarian organizations on the ground. Without basic running water or soap to fight a virus as highly contagious as Ebola, refugees are actually being told to use sand or oatmeal as friction agents just to try and wash their hands. It's a devastating, heartbreaking micro-narrative of survival. Yet, incredibly, despite all these intense earthly crises, the historic heat, the relentless storms, the devastating epidemics, humanity is still looking up. In a pretty staggering announcement today, NASA unveiled incredibly detailed long-term architectural plans for a permanent human base on the moon. We're talking blueprints for sustainable habitation modules and pipelines to actually utilize lunar resources. It shows that our ambitions for space exploration remain completely undeterred. All right, let's bring it back down to Earth for our final segment, Section 4, Politics and Civil Unrest. Let's see how these overarching global pressures are fracturing domestic politics and civil society. Down in Bolivia, center-right President Rodrigo Paz just made a dramatic move. He announced he's slashing his own salary by 50%. Half his pay, just gone. It's a really desperate attempt to cool down weeks of aggressive, paralyzing anti-government protests in La Paz. But so far, it's been totally unsuccessful. Demonstrators are still clashing with security forces, demanding his complete resignation just 6 months into his term. Meanwhile, up in Washington, legislative friction has ground things to a halt. The Senate had to delay a vote on an immigration enforcement bill because of deep partisan divides. Several Republican senators actually balked at passing the package because it's tied to a highly controversial $2 billion fund announced by the Department of Justice. And man, that fund has sparked some intense debate across the political spectrum. And looking at cultural disruptions, over in the sports world, Shinnosuke Abe, the manager of Japan's most historic baseball team, the Yomiuri Giants, has abruptly stepped down. This sudden resignation came right after a highly publicized arrest over a domestic altercation with his daughter in Tokyo. It's a huge scandal, sending absolute shockwaves through the Japanese sports world right now. But circling back to that stalled U.S. Senate bill for a second, this quote explains what that $2 billion DOJ fund is actually designed to do. It aims to compensate citizens alleging political weaponization by past administrations. That one specific detail really impartially highlights the deep-seated ideological frictions complicating how major nations like the U.S. govern themselves today. It's a very clear snapshot of the domestic divide. So, as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with this to chew on. Today alone, we've seen military strikes sitting right alongside peace talks, $20 billion tech alliances, historic heat waves, absolutely desperate health crises, and totally paralyzed governments. With these escalating conflicts, severe climate anomalies, and deep domestic unrest, how are these cascading events going to shape the remainder of 2026? The global dashboard is literally blinking red everywhere you look, and how leaders navigate these intersecting crises will absolutely define the rest of our year. Thanks for diving into the data with me today, and as always, keep questioning the world around you.